Hey everybody, welcome to Real Estate Disruptors. Today we're recording something very special, a very special series. This is the PPC Masterclass with Bateman Collective. We're going to spend the next few episodes breaking down how to effectively run a digital marketing campaign so that whether you want to do PPC on your own or if you want to be able to properly vet a PPC provider, you know exactly what to look for when you're deciding whether you want to work with them or not. So today we got Brandon Bateman with Bateman Collective, and we're talking about today why PPC.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here, Steve. Thank you for having me again on the podcast.
I mean, I can always geek out on marketing. It's like, I've been very, very passionate about sales, very vocal about sales, but sales doesn't happen if the phone's not ringing.
Yeah.
Right. And
super fair point. And it happens very differently with different types of leads too.
Definitely. So before we get into why PPC, let's talk, for those that haven't seen any of our episodes that we recorded together, tell us about your journey into real estate.
Yeah, I'm a weird guy in this industry. It feels like everybody in this industry, they started because they got into real estate, and then one day they realized I have this problem and I learned to solve this problem this way, and then I'm going to solve that problem for other people too. And I'm like backwards because I came from the marketing side, which I think gives me a little bit of a unique perspective.
Yeah.
I started this company, it was about 7 years ago when I was a sophomore in college. Mm-hmm. So I was super young. I still am kind of young, but I was even younger than I am now. And I knew so little about anything.
Right.
And I decided that I wanted to get into digital marketing and started doing some freelance work and stuff like that. So I started working with a few clients, and I did, like, at that time I would do pretty much anything. Mm-hmm. Like, we did a lot of like Kickstarter campaign advertising or e-commerce products. I had like B2B SaaS products, like pretty much everything you could imagine.
You're doing the pay-per-click marketing for them.
Well, here's the interesting thing. At the beginning, I did a lot of Facebook marketing. That was actually like the first thing I ever did. Then when I say beginning, like this is like probably 4 months after the beginning. Mm-hmm. I got this call from this guy named Mark Stubler. I know you've had Mark Stubler on the podcast before. A lot of people don't know him. You might know him if I say Cody Hoffein's business partner.
Right. Everyone knows Cody.
Yes.
Right. Mark is the one behind the scenes making Cody look good.
That's right. I like Mark a lot.
Yeah.
So I get this call from this guy named Mark, and this time I don't know anything about him or anything. He just says, like, I am looking for somebody who can help run our PPC campaigns better than they're run now. I've worked with every industry-specific company that I can find. We went through all of them, and we just can't find anybody who can make this work for us. Can you take a look at it? And I said, okay. What I didn't say is I've never run a PPC campaign before. Mm-hmm. So he asked when I could come by, and he asked if I could like come the next day or something. I said, like, I can't, but I can come next week. Mm-hmm. Just so I gave myself like time to binge everything on YouTube that existed about PPC advertising.
Right.
This is like my start with PPC, and I knew a little bit about digital advertising, but like I don't know how you feel about your past self. I always look at myself like even 6 months ago, like a complete idiot that had no idea what he was doing.
Yeah, I've had many instances of those where I went from like a complete imbecile to like mildly competent.
Yes. So this is one of those journeys to mildly competent. So anyways, I mean, at this time, this is back before Cody was even, like, this is 2017. Mm-hmm. Cody wasn't like super well known, wasn't doing a ton.
So before Wholesaling Inc.
Yeah, their business was a little smaller. I think I don't remember exactly when he got involved with Wholesaling Inc. But regardless of the situation, like it was kind of like earlier stage for them. I remember showing up to the office and being like, "Who are these people?" Mm-hmm. Like they're not trying to sell something. Usually, people I talk to are trying to sell something, and also they're in this like sketchy little like basement office. I was like, "What is this place? And what is this industry?" And so I walk in there, and then Mark's there, and he's got this. He shows me the computer screen, and there's his Google Ads account. He's like, "Tell me what's wrong with this account." So I took
your minimal PPC experience.
I mean, every video on YouTube that could be found, I watched it before this moment. So I was prepared, and I thought through like all the things. So I started poking through the accounts, and I tell them, "Oh, I don't like this," or "I think this should be done this way instead." Right. Like all these things based on what I had learned. So I didn't know this until later, but turns out like he was talking with like 3 or 4 companies, and the price I had quoted him, it was $3,000 at that time per month to manage it. It was apparently like twice the price of anybody else who had pitched him on this service.
At this point, you're like 20 years old?
Yeah, I'm about 20 years old. I'm twice as expensive as anybody else, and I've never done this before.
I mean, it's pretty a lot of chutzpah, right? To come in commanding $3,000 a month at 20 years old.
Well, I didn't know what to charge, to be honest. Like I just, with my other clients, like my strategy was I just charge a little bit more each time until somebody says no. So here we were at 3,000. That was the running amount of what I was just charging clients, because I had no idea what to do. But here's the, like, to me, this isn't like a fake it till you make it story, because like I was going to find a way to make this work. And I fully believed that. So anyways, somehow, some way, Mark, like we just got along really well. Like, cause I'm not a guy to like make big promises. You probably know that about me. Like I'm the kind of guy that tells you I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock and then I get there at 9:45 just because I don't like to mislead people. Right. So anyways, I was still like very, very humble about it. Like, I don't know if I can help you, but if I did, I would do all of these things. And that's what I believe is going to make the difference. And Mark saw a lot of potential in that. So over the next few years, I start working in, still continuing to work in a lot of different industries. I was actually chasing, like my goal was I want to work with the biggest clients. So I found companies spending like hundreds of thousands, or in some cases even millions of dollars a month on these marketing channels that I would work with, which is cool because you get to see kind of the enterprise side and how do those marketers do it, because turns out the people who work at the agencies that work with those companies or who work in those companies are some of the best in the world. And you can learn there's like this huge gap between how PPC is done for small companies and how PPC is done for larger companies. And
what's that gap?
I mean, that's what we're going to talk about over the rest of this series. But it's more like a lot of people think it's just the people just stare at the screen more. They spend more hours, like more minutes, just investing into the campaign, and just because of all the like time, it gets magically better. It's not my experience actually, as much as it's a smarter strategy. And you can have people that are more experienced, that are frankly smarter people, and that's what makes the difference. But regardless, I did all that. And then this client that I started working with, Cody Hoffine, Mark Stubler's business, became like this business that I never heard of. Like I would do everything. I'd be like calling them, emailing them. I'd come by their office and drop off cookies, just trying to figure out like, I've been managing your campaign. Can we talk? Like, is it good? Is it bad?
It's just radio silence.
Yeah, just radio silence for multiple years. I would like touch base with one of their admins like once in a while, but like it was hard to like get a hold of them. I guess they were kind of busy, and apparently I didn't know how well it was going. And then after 3 years, I finally talked to them. This is my first time talking.
So they've been paying you $3,000 a month, and they don't even talk to you.
Correct, for 3 years.
Wow.
Yep. So 3 years later, Cody calls me up. I never talked to Cody. He's like, I don't know if you know this, but this channel has become our cheapest cost per deal marketing channel, our largest revenue per deal, our highest return on investment marketing channel, and our single highest revenue marketing channel at scale. Apparently that first year, we kept the ad spend the same and we doubled revenue. And the second year, we doubled revenue again while keeping the ad spend the same. And then the third year, we doubled the ad spend and we doubled the revenue. Right. So we kind of proved that we could scale it a little bit.
So you got the cost per you kept the cost but increased revenue. So the spend was the same. So maybe the cost per contract or cost per deal went down so they could double the revenue.
There's some of that, and then some of like growing revenue per deal, because this is like, this
Very
time
evolving
period. It's like 2017, then 18, 19, 20, like growing deal spreads were normal at that time period too.
Gotcha.
And they were getting better and stuff. So there's a lot that contributed to the growth over that time period. But we'd gotten to the point where we generated 1.4 million in wholesale assignment fees over that year from the online marketing alone. And that was kind of the first like case study or the first entrance I had into this industry. And I started getting referrals from them, and those people started giving me referrals. And once at some point I look at my business, this is back in 2020, and like the very, very beginning of 2020, right before you and I met. And I realized like we're mostly in real estate, and I haven't even tried. I don't seek out those clients or anything. And at that point, we cut off the rest of the industries that we worked with and just focus on real estate, which is, I wish I could say it was like my brilliance that I decided to do that. It wasn't. I was kind of like, basically it just happened naturally, and now I get to take credit for it. But in hindsight, that was an amazing decision.
What were the industries that you moved away from?
E-commerce. I really specifically loved like enterprise B2B marketing. We took one of our clients, we did most of their online demand gen until they got acquired by VMware. If you don't know them, they're like at the time, like a $40 billion publicly traded company. The reason I love B2B enterprise lead gen, it's actually the same reason I love real estate. There's more that they have in common than you think. Very high cost per lead, very variable lead quality, and high difficulty for marketers in connecting those things so you can actually optimize for the things that matter. Which means that most marketers in those industries suck.
Right.
And there's potential, if you're really, really good, to be much, much better than everybody else. Versus there's some industries where like the best of the marketers and the worst of the marketers are pretty close.
They're commodities.
Yes, exactly.
Right. The skill gap is extremely noticeable here.
Yeah, that's why I love real estate investment marketing.
Yeah.
Because to Google, a seller, a buyer, a motivated seller, they're all almost the same person.
Yeah.
So targeting and finding the right people online is really, really hard. Just the same as it was for, I mean, we worked with companies selling like IT infrastructure automation software, or like we had one that was like military drones. Super cool. But could you imagine like a more niche PPC campaign? Like, we're looking for people from the government searching about defense drones. And we could do it and it worked, but like it was so hard to find like just the right targeting, just the right people. And it was really hard to connect what's happening in sales to what's happening in marketing. And that's what made it really interesting.
What would be like the filters to figure that out? Proximity to a base?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't as useful as intent. It was more just really, really getting down into like what the people are
specific
searching.
Keywords.
Yeah.
What's the language that they're using if they're this kind of if they're in this particular career?
Yes. So it's that, and then it's also how are you defining success and how do you optimize for those things, which is something we'll talk about.
Which is all where the analytics and the attributions.
Yes. And that's it. Yeah, and it goes so deep. That's why we're doing this 6-part series just about like how do you nail that, because to the rest of the world, a seller and a motivated seller, they're the same thing. But in this industry, they're so different.
Well, I mean, when I started my journey, it was a lot easier, right? At that time, it was a lot less competitive.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm just thinking I need to find sellers because I need to get listings, right? I'm a realtor. I need to get listings. So what are all the things that you might Google as a homeowner? Right. And so it was, what's my house worth? Appraisals. I was doing appraisal keywords where I would send you to a, it was kind of like you put in your address and everything else. And then I would reach out to you and then I would give you an estimated value of your home. Like, that's what I was doing. Right. So I bought Tempe Values, chandlerprices.com.
I know you're a domain hoarder.
I am very much a domain hoarder. Right. So I think Phoenix Home Prices, I think like we're all the different ones. So depending if you're in Phoenix, that's what you got. If you're in Tempe, that's what you got. Right. So it's very intentional.
Yeah.
And what I learned very quickly was that had nothing to do with motivation. Finding out what my house is worth is not intent. And so the ones that were finding intent was sell my house. And with that journey, sell my house, like, these are great appointments, but the cost per click is way higher.
Yep.
Right. And the people that I'm competing against is like, oh, let's Google sell my house. What does this look like? Everyone's a cash buyer. Like, what is this deal? Right. And that's how I went down this journey, was that I was just thinking of all the different things that people would Google that want to sell their house. And then you find, oh, sell my house. Oh, people that say Google sell my house also Google buy my house. And so that's when I realized the value of intent. Until then, like, they're indicators and that was it. Yeah.
100%. That totally makes sense. And there's a lot of those things you say are still true today, and some of them have changed a little bit. Like the world of like buying domains so that you can rank for things. Yeah. That's like old school SEO, right? And it's a little bit of a different world here, but it's totally like you're totally right. And those things, like getting in the seller's head and understanding like what they want and understanding how to reverse engineer that and gather data around that. Like that's a lot of what PPC is. So yeah, that's why I'm super excited.
And there was no like attribution, like we bought their house. That didn't exist.
Yeah.
It was just like, finding that these people that Google here that really that went to this particular website I knew it's like we need to spend more on on those keywords. What could I track? I could track conversion of registration.
Yeah.
That's what the only thing I could track was
like
registration.
A lead form on the website.
That's the only thing I could track. I could never track did this turn into a sale.
Yeah, 100%. Which as we'll talk about, it can be pretty valuable to track more metrics than just those basics.
Right.
So that's the general background, and that's when you and I met. Was probably like 2020. Yeah, just about 2020. I remember it was right before COVID, and we got into that's when I went deep into real estate investment, and that's really when my company grew.
Yeah, that's probably 2018 or 19 because we launched the podcast in 18. And we were at that Tempe office because it was crowded, right? That podcast room was me, you, and Cody.
Was it? Was that in a different place than here? I remember it's the same office, but just a different room, right?
If it was here, then it would have been in that room. That would have been 2020.
Okay, it was 2020. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm not getting my dates mixed up
because then it'd be post COVID.
4 years into like just.
Yeah, so then it was post COVID because we got into space after COVID.
Maybe it was. I think we met January of 2020 at a Collective Genius event.
But for sure, it was after CG. That's right. So it was 2020 then. For sure, it was a crowded room.
Yeah, right? it was a crowded room. I remember that.
It's a little bit different space than this.
Yeah. But that's the journey in real estate. And now we have about 30 team members, 190 clients, I want to say.
How many team members?
30.
30.
Yeah, that's usually surprising to people, but there's a lot of work to get done.
30. We're talking like W-2.
30
VAs.
Probably 25 W-2. We have like
W2s.
Probably 5 like VAs, contractors, etc. There are some part-time. We have like a good intern program.
Pretty significant overhead.
It is significant overhead, yeah. But there's, I mean, to do what we do for our clients is not, I guess not easy to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have about 30 team members, and like I said, about 190 clients. We've had clients across the United States, Canada, Australia, pretty much most markets. Right. Which gives you a lot of vision into what's going on across the real estate market overall and what strategies are working, and we gather a lot of data. And so yeah, it's been a super neat experience. And like I said, I wish it was like an intentional strategy of mine long ago. But we've found we found a lot of potential to create results that people just can't create without the amount of data that we have. Gotcha.
So what are we going to be talking about over these next few episodes?
So there's a lot into it. So I'll give like a brief overview of this whole series. So number one, we have a few resources. So there's a toolkit, and that's going to include some resources that I'm talking about, and other resources that people can use to run their own PPC campaigns, to learn more about PPC. I mean, something that you had mentioned was like kind of two purposes of this at the beginning. Like, let's help people to be able to run their own PPC campaigns, or to be able to vet out companies. There's a third one that's actually my primary reason for wanting to do this. And that is that the advantage that a business owner can have if they really understand how a marketing channel works, even if they're working with another agency, right? Like on the basic level, they can understand how that marketing channel works is huge. Because our clients that get it, we can have really productive strategic conversations, and they understand why things have gone wrong in their other PPC campaigns that they've run and stuff like that. Like, that's my whole goal with this. Is there's people listening to this right now that have run PPC before and it hasn't worked. And at some point during this series, some light bulb's going to go off in their head. They're going to say, "That's why it didn't work. Yeah, I have to do that." And that's the whole goal of this. So then they could be smarter with their strategy in the future. Because what often happens is we try to take the lessons we've learned from other marketing channels and apply them to PPC, and then it just doesn't work. So what we deal with as an agency all the time is people like it feels sometimes like we're like fighting our clients just to get them the results that they need, because they're constantly wanting us to do stuff that we shouldn't be doing. Right. So gotcha. I think education is super important. So yeah, we'll have the toolkit. We'll have links available. Like if people want to schedule a consult with my team, ask about their specific market, ask questions more specific to them. We'll put that in the description, but it'll be batemancollective.com/disruptors. So they can do that. And this, like my whole goal for this, and this is the same thing I shared with you when I reached out to you to first build this, was let's make the most comprehensive information available on the internet about PPC for real estate investors. So this is going to be long, like it's an investment to go through this, but we're going to add so much value, and I'm going to try to hold nothing back,
Right.
just to give as much as we possibly can so that people have the resources they need to succeed with the channel.
Yeah. Well, you talk about, our scenario, right? We went from complete imbeciles to like mildly competent to decent, right?
Mhm.
The hope then is like, if you don't know, at least you know what questions to ask. Because what
Mhm.
happens is, particularly if you got a vendor who's not transparent, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, what's wrong with my campaign? Oh, well, we're taking a look at it. And that's the extent you get, right? But if you have the transparency, you can actually look at it. It's like, okay, this, I don't know, do these ad sets make sense, right?
Mhm.
Are you testing it? How much testing are we doing? And so you can ask better questions as a client, and then we can figure out like what strategies make, again, best as a best practice versus like this feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And then you can avoid that situation where, like, unknowingly as the client, you like steer the company you're working with
Mhm.
to actually work worse for you,
Mhm.
which people do all the time.
Right.
We try to like be really, really firm, but even with us, I sometimes see like you just let the client like mow over you, and now you're doing a strategy that doesn't work. And it's like it happens all the time. Like this is like one of the main things I have to train my team on. So that's why I'm super excited for this. So
Gotcha.
just to tease like the series and the episodes that we're gonna do, so that everybody knows what to expect. So in this episode, I want to talk about like why this marketing channel. Like if you're listening to this so far, I mean, we haven't even talked about it that much so far because honestly, I think it's kind of universally a channel that everybody knows can work really well. It's PPC. It's so exciting. But let's talk about like where does PPC fit within a marketing mix? How do you know if you're ready for it? Like the number of or like different benchmark metrics. How does it compare to pay per lead? Like all that kind of stuff. For the next episode, we're going to talk about episode number 2. I'm going to give a fair warning here. It's going to be the most boring one, but it's going to lay the foundation of a lot of knowledge that you need to understand all the really exciting stuff that's going to make a big difference. So we're going to talk about how Google works and bidding, which doesn't sound like the sexiest of all marketing, but it's actually, I think you'll find it really fascinating. We're going to talk in the 3rd episode about location and budget strategy. This is probably the most like practically useful one. So if you can make it through number 2, the number 2 will help you understand number 3 really, really clearly. And that helps you do great strategy. Then number 4, we're going to talk all about optimizing for lead quality and how you do that. Because that's the number one thing that people do wrong in this industry is they focus on generating leads, not generating deals. That's one thing we do differently. And I'm going to share all the strategies that we use to focus on lead quality. Number 5 is what data do we have that suggests how you do acquisitions for PPC leads and how that might vary from your other marketing channels. So we're going to go pretty deep into that. And then number 6, the way this is going to work. So you can go and download the toolkit again with the resources in the links below. On there, you'll find a place where you can register for a live Q&A session. And you can also submit questions for that session. So number 6, we're just kind of going to scoop up all the questions from all the prior episodes, and we're going to do a live question and answer session.
Awesome. I think that's going to be great. So we're talking about inbound versus outbound, right? We're saying like, PPC, this is it. Whether you do it now or you do it later, but for sure, this is going to be part of your strategy, right? So inbound versus outbound. So talk to me about the scalability of those two.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I'm actually going to share for anybody joining on YouTube. Yeah, I'm going to share a graphic just so you can see and understand this a little bit more. I'll put this here so you can see it too, Steve, as we go through this. But a lot of people talk about inbound, outbound, like they're like, it's a binary thing, like it's a channel inbound or outbound. I don't think we often think about it as like a scale. Like you could imagine on one side of the scale, you have like fully outbound marketing. On the other side of the scale, you have fully inbound marketing. And then there's everything in between, right? So just to show like some examples of like of marketing channels and where I think they fit on the scale, like a fully outbound marketing channel might be like door knocking, for example. That's like as outbound as you could possibly be. Maybe close to there, we have like realtor outreach, and then we have like cold call, we have cold text. So these are like your traditional, like more outbound type of channels. And then we move into like semi-inbound channels. And here's the difference. In an outbound, I'm like going to you, like I'm like calling you and trying to see if I can get a hold of you. As we get to these semi-inbound channels, what we're getting to is channels where you go to the seller, and then they selectively choose that they want to respond to you.
Right.
but they're not looking for you. Like, let's just say you're doing direct mail. That's a great example of a semi-inbound channel. You're not, like, people don't go to their postcard, or they don't go to their mailbox just like thinking and praying like, this is my cash offer mailbox. I'm just going to go to the mailbox. I'm looking for a card that's going to be a cash offer in my house. And
there's no intent.
No, there's no intent. It's just like they went to their mailbox for whatever reason. They go to their mailbox and then they pull that out and they're like, oh, you know what? This actually could be good for me right now in my situation, right? So those are semi-inbound channels. Like Facebook ads is one of the channels we manage that falls in that realm. Direct mail, and then even a little bit more inbound. You have like radio and TV, but it's still semi-inbound because these are people that are, you're still showing them the ad first, and then they're choosing to respond to it.
Right. But that one is more general because this is not like you're not targeted. Right. Or you're targeting is because you watch this channel at this time.
Although ironically, the lead quality objectively from radio and TV is very good. And I think the reason it's really good is because there's a lot of friction. Like it's hard to like write down real quick the phone number that you have to call or remember the name of the company. And so because it's not like that's why Facebook ads would have a lower lead quality than like TV advertising, for example, because in Facebook ads, you just like click the button, fill out the form, versus in TV, you got to like, it's more friction before you get there. So that helps filter and improve the lead quality.
There's the friction, but there's also the implied authority as well.
That's true. Absolutely.
Right. Like if this guy's on TV, he has to be legitimate. Why would he not be on TV? Or why would he be on TV if he's not legitimate?
Yeah. Versus Facebook is full of all kinds of junk. Right?
Anybody and everybody.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. So that's kind of like moving from outbound to semi-inbound. Then there's like truly, genuinely inbound channels. And that's going to be all search marketing. So here's the difference about search marketing. These people go online specifically to search for a company they're going to do business with. And the reason I'm sharing this is to help you understand like where does this fall within the context of other marketing channels, but also help you understand like why people get so excited about PPC as a marketing channel. Because it just falls in line with SEO is like some of the most inbound form of marketing, where these people like specifically looked for you. That's as inbound as it gets. What that usually means is that you're going to have less leads per contract than you do from some of these other sources. You're going to have like different quality of conversation. It's hard to negotiate prices when the seller's like, well, you just came to me, versus they're coming to you. It's a completely different conversation from a sales standpoint.
Yeah, position is very different. And this is if Yellow Pages would still be, in business, that'd be the Yellow Pages would be right there.
I should have put Yellow Pages on this graph. Yep. Yellow Pages belongs way on the right-hand side of this graph.
Right. Because like I'm looking for that. I mean, it might even be the back, right? Like that was the primo. Yeah. It was the back of the Yellow Pages.
Yeah. Why the back? I've never heard that.
Because it was all color. Like you saw that, like it's like a billboard on.
Oh, I see.
Right, like you didn't search for it inside. It's right there.
Another thing before my time.
Apparently. So the other thing too is like I think I look at Facebook and TV as like disruptive marketing, right? In that I'm just doing whatever, and then bam, it's in my face. Oh, that makes sense right now for me. So we're it's a little bit more hopeful.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's slightly different. So one is you're not interrupting at all. They chose you. Whereas the other one is like, I hope they see this ad. I hope it applies to them.
Yeah. If somebody ever calls you from your PPC ad and says, take me off your list, like I don't even know what to think at that point. Like it's like they like went there, right? It's like me pulling out the Yellow Pages and finding a company and calling them angrily. Yeah. Because they're there,
Yeah, it wouldn't be from PPC unless you're using your own brand as a keyword. Then I guess in that instance.
Yeah, I suppose that would happen. Yeah, and we'll talk about branded campaigns too as part of this. One of the most common misconceptions in PPC is around branded campaigns.
Yeah.
But if we look at this like outbound to inbound scale, I'm just going to put a little arrow on here, right? So this is what I already talked about. So lead conversion as we go from outbound to inbound, it increases.
Yeah.
Right. There's also a couple other things. Number one, the cost generally increases of these channels as we go from outbound to inbound. And also, as we're going from outbound to inbound, there's a decrease in the time and operational expense associated with doing deals.
Well, you say cost goes up, but it's also like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's we're not necessarily accounting for cost of labor or cost of data, cost of tools and services, right? Like the great thing about these guys that do strictly PPC and TV is, yeah, they have CRMs, but they don't really need the best CRMs. And they don't.
There's less data. It's like, when you have tens of thousands of leads,
right?
A CRM looks different than when you have like hundreds.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you don't have to manage the cold callers. There's a lot of work, right? So, we've done a lot where we pull data, right? And there's all these different places. We Recently started working with PropWire,
Mhm.
but you got Batch, you got PropStream, you got Investor Machine, 80/20, like friends that run all these other ones, right?
Yeah.
You pay for the data, and you got to pay for the skip tracing, and you got to pay for the phone numbers, and you got to like to actually use the phone numbers to call them or text them, and then you got
Yeah.
to pay for VA, right? You got
Yeah.
launch control, you got smartphone,
And then you're paying the
and
person who
CallRail.
like organizes all that stuff, or that's you.
Yeah.
And then you're paying the person who manages those VAs. Like when it goes sour, I chuckle inside sometimes when people tell me that they have like a business that like runs without them.
Mhm.
And usually what that means is like there the cases where that's genuinely true, but
Mhm.
in a lot of cases what that means is like unless
Absentee.
somebody quits.
Yeah.
Until
Right.
somebody quits, or until I have to fire one of my like cold calling VAs or whatever. And then it's like, and what you don't think about when you think that is like that happens all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, if you're running it well, right? So yeah, you're right. You're totally right. Like that's where time and operational expense is.
I know, but you say time and
bad.
operational expense, but I look at that. There's still a cost.
That's cost. It's a different cost.
It's not a cost for the lead. It's a cost to get the lead.
Great point.
RJ Bates, right? Pardon the disruption. Him looking at his own data, and he has found that PPC, now he does nationwide,
Mhm.
right? So his cost per leads are lower, but cost per lead for PPC versus cost per lead for all those other things we just talked about, PPC actually ended up being cheaper in the long run.
And yeah, if you're national, that's fully true. And the other element here, like I'll just give you an example. And I did this kind of like informal study, right? Because you hear about these people that are like cold calling and have like great numbers, right? Like I have an 8x return on cold calling, and I have a 10x return on cold calling.
True pre-COVID.
Yeah, it's a little bit less true now. But what I did is it's like took some of these companies that mostly focus on cold call, and obviously I know a lot of companies that mostly focus on PPC, and look at the businesses and see like what is the net margin of the business. What you'll be surprised to know is at the end, like all like from either group, of course it varied between company to company, but the net margin of the business on either was not significantly different. What was really different was their marketing return on ad spend that they measured. Their marketing return on ad spend or return on investment. I'm speaking more like like an online marketer than a normal marketer, right? But yeah, their return on investment for their cold call and stuff was like high numbers compared to the companies that did PPC. But if you look at the P&L, basically like how it worked out is marketing expense on the P&L was smaller if they did outbound marketing, but operational expense was higher. Versus if they did a lot of PPC, then their marketing expense was high and then their operational expense was low. Right. So a lot of people, when they're focusing on like, they're already doing outbound stuff and they're looking at, should I do PPC? They're thinking I have to hit the same return on investment targets that I have with my cold call. And usually it's not true. Like to hit the same net margin as a company, you actually don't need to hit those numbers quite the same. And then also you look at companies of a certain revenue, how many heads do they have in the company? How many people? How much to manage? How complicated is it? And it's a whole different story with PPC. So I think that's a super attractive piece of it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is things that we don't account for is that it takes a lot more effort to build trust with outbound, with cold calling. So not to say it doesn't work, it just takes a lot more effort.
Yeah, what's the cost of lower sales team morale?
Yeah, right.
It's something.
And then the other thing too is the relationship is because it didn't start off on a great foot. It's also harder to maintain. So they don't cross the line to the final closing as often. The fallout rate is higher with outbound versus inbound.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Personally, I could see that one going either way because PPC also gets you some crazy people. I know you have some personal experience with some crazy people from PPC ads.
Yeah. I mean,
and that can contribute to fallout too.
That was a fallout. Yeah, the guy went to prison. That was really unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if you shared the story. Wild story. But yeah, I could see it going both ways. But there's something about like somebody who's actively looking. The other thing is cash conversion cycle. Like if you're cold calling someone, how long is it going to be before they close? Versus if they're like coming to you, it's almost like if you're cold calling, you're waiting for the time to be right, and that's when you're finally going to get it under contract. Versus with PPC, you know the time's right from the beginning because they're searching right now. That means they have a problem right now. They're motivated.
They're feeling more heat right now. So versus a pain indicator that you see from a motivated seller list, this is like, hey, I need to sell.
Yeah, 100%. So it's definitely a different type of lead, different type of conversation.
Mm.
I'm not the guy that's going to tell you that it's right for everybody. I can tell
Right.
you like number one reason that people don't like PPC sometimes is let's just say I have no money and I'm looking for the cheapest way to find a deal. The answer is not PPC.
No.
The answer is like you pick up a phone,
Mm-hmm.
you go knock some doors. Like you gotta like, because here's the thing: outbound channels, you're using your time as part of the asset for the marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and then for inbound channels, it's like your money's working for you, right? So what that means is you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, waiting for a lead to come in, and then it comes in, and then it's like all hands on deck. But it's it's a completely different thing. So what I find is oftentimes, like especially if you're willing to grind, the cost per deal of some other marketing channels can be lower.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a like faster way to get to a deal. A lot of people assume that because PPC has a faster cash conversion cycle means that it's the quickest way to get to a deal. That's not necessarily true because it's also really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say the place that PPC usually fits for companies, we'll talk in a later episode about like specifically how you choose your budget and your timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But the spoiler there is it probably takes a little more money than you think, and it probably takes a little more time than you think.
Right.
And
You don't turn it on today and then have a contract tomorrow.
yeah, or not usually. Like it's things like that happen. I mean, I just had a conversation with one of my sales guys recently,
Mm-hmm.
and he comes back from this conference. Like, we go to a lot of these conferences. It was just one of these masterminds. And he's sharing some good news with the team. And he says, oh, there's this client there that's super happy. They've been with us 2 weeks. They already have 3 contracts. They're super happy. And he's expecting me to like rah with him. And I was like, did you tell that client to shut up? That's literally the words I said to him. And it kind of like took him off guard a little bit. He's like, I'm sharing good news here. I'm like, yeah, but that good news is making other people think that they're going to get 3 contracts in 2 weeks if they turn on PPC campaigns with us. And I'm not happy about that. It's like something you'll find is really different about me is like a lot of agencies, they like highlight their best stories. I specifically exclude our best success stories from our case studies.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people getting like the wrong idea of
Right.
how this works. So like, yeah, there's stories like that. Like I can show you tons of clients, like probably over a dozen clients that like have gotten a lead within the first week that turns into a contract. But
That's
is
not
that
the norm?
No, but it's not the norm. And that's luck. And I don't like marketing based on luck. That's why you'll notice most of our case studies are like more than 6 months, even if the client had success right away. Because we're looking for like, like we see that this person starts PPC and then they have success in their first week with some other marketing agency. And then they're a case study for that marketing agency. And then the next month they're working with us. That's the reality of this industry is like, it's a really up and down thing, and like sustained long-term success is really what we're looking for. So I like to play games that I know I can win predictably. Like I don't like to play the lottery. And I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing with a marketing channel. If you're just kind of hoping it's going to work right away.
All right, you're here for the long haul.
100%.
Now, what's the difference between pay-per-click and pay-per-lead?
Good question. So, and this is one I get super often. Have you noticed this, that people consider like pay-per-click and pay-per-lead to be like almost interchangeable? Like I've heard people sometimes say like, I'm doing PPC when really they're just doing pay-per-lead marketing.
Interesting.
And I don't know if it's because they both have like the 2 P's in the name, or if they think that like it's because pay-per-lead companies like skew more towards online marketing. But here's kind of how I think about it. Like direct mail, you're paying per postcard. Facebook, you're paying per impression. Google, you're paying per click, hence it's called PPC. Pay-per-lead it's just a different way of paying for things. It's not the marketing channel though. You'll notice like this whole graph that I laid out that has all these different marketing channels on it. I didn't put pay-per-lead on here. And the reason pay-per-lead's not on here is because pay-per-lead's not a marketing channel. Pay-per-lead is a way of buying leads. The marketing channel is what underlies the leads that the pay-per-lead company is generating. And different pay-per-lead companies use different channels, and many of them use many channels. So the thing with pay-per-lead is you don't control the actual marketing underneath it.
Or the intent.
Right? So like, let's just say like I'm a pay-per-lead company. Am I likely to use a home value keyword? Yeah. Right? Because it gets me a lead that is not refundable. Because it is a person who has a house to sell. And they're not technically listed on the market. Like, so it's still like that's the for pay-per-lead companies, that's the goal. Is like we need to generate leads that are good enough that they don't get refunded, basically. So the
incentives are different.
The incentives are for sure different.
Yeah.
Now that said, I'm not like here to say a bunch of bad stuff about pay-per-lead. Like it's a good way to get leads. For me, I think pay-per-lead is a good way to get leads if you have a smaller budget and you're not really able to do the big ramp up for PPC. It's also a really good channel supplementary.
Yeah.
It's just, I would be really, really slow to have that be a core part of my business. And I've seen a lot of people where like one day they don't change anything, but the pay per lead company changes the way that they're doing the marketing underneath the leads.
Yeah.
And then now all my lead quality has changed, yet my cost hasn't changed. Yet I've done nothing. That's the issue that you run into with it. So I think it's good. It's like one of those things where like when it's good, keep going. Does it work? Absolutely. Does it not work sometimes? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Test it, play with it. If I had most of like my marketing budget in pay per lead, I'd be really, really nervous, even if it's going well, because concentration on a channel sounds like a really good strategy until suddenly it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then diversification seems like what you should have been doing all along.
Well, so pay per lead is one of those things that's it's always good, or not always good. It's generally good when they're rolling out, right? Because when they're rolling out and they don't have a lot of clients and they have these excess leads, they can sell the leads, and it's great because they're you don't have a lot of volume, so your cost per you don't have a supply problem, right? You have a demand problem.
Yeah.
So you need to go find more people to buy your leads. And as you grow, then you have more demand. And at some point, don't know when, your demand exceeds your supply. And the moment you have more demand for your leads than your supply, now you need to go source more leads. And now your lead quality suffers.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah.
Because your first leads were some fixed cost per lead, right? As a person that's aggregating the leads. But as demand increases, you need to fill that demand, or you don't. You could choose not to fill the demand and maintain quality, but then as a business owner, you're ignoring, you're turning down revenue.
Yeah, or you're driving price way up. Like
yeah,
because that's why a lot of them have an auction system in it. And like I want to be careful about like what I say here, because I'm not saying like people who run pay per lead companies are bad people. We have to recognize, I actually have a lot of friends that run pay per lead companies, and I think they're really good people. We have to recognize that the standard economics of that business are such that there is a misalignment of incentives.
Right.
And that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
Even like as well-intentioned as somebody running it. Like another common thing that happens in pay per lead, even like outside of the control of the people running the pay per lead companies, is all pay per lead companies buy leads from other pay per lead companies or other affiliates that they have and stuff like that. In fact, there's some that's most of what they do.
Yeah.
And then they get screwed over sometimes because somebody sells them a bunch of bad leads and then they're accidentally screwing over their clients. And so it's this big thing. Like it's a kind of tricky situation where even like well-intentioned people can like screw up the lead quality sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just not exactly the right incentive. So that's where I think like for me, the place for pay per lead is early on. Or it's supplemental to other channels. That's like, in my opinion, kind of where it fits in the mix of things. And you just want to be really careful with it being most of your marketing.
Gotcha. So we're going to go into this much deeper level in the next subsequent modules episodes. But for now, like, what are some key metrics? Like, they don't watch the other episodes for whatever reason, right? Like, at a high level, what are the key benchmarks that people should be targeting?
Yeah, let's talk about a few things. And I just want to share like, just some basic numbers just so we can get a start of what's pretty normal. And I'll share like some of the like most common questions that we get. One thing that you'll notice here is this is probably like what we were just about to go over is probably like on the internet, the most comprehensive overview of PPC benchmarks that exists. It's not even going to be that much, but like the thing is the way that most people get their data is they just think in their mind like, oh, well, I have a few clients that I could think of that all have these numbers and I'm just going to like spit those out. Also, humans have like a bias towards positivity. So I'm going to show some numbers, and some of them are going to look a little prettier, some of them are going to look a little uglier.
Yeah.
And it's mostly from the standpoint of like, this is everything. This is like the winning case study and like the worst client we've ever had, all just merged into one. So it's fascinating, but it's I think as transparent as I could possibly be. Number one question we get all the time is, what is the cost per lead? I don't like that question. I think there's way too much focus in this industry around lead cost and way too little focus on lead quality, where there's kind of a focus on each, but it seems like the only one you focus on is whichever one's not good at the moment. So like, because there's a lot of focus on lead quality too, but But let's talk about cost per lead and what's normal. I'm going to share a graph here and just explain kind of this range and how it goes. So this is a graph showing our cost per lead. This is as of like last year across our different clients. So this is a histogram. For those that don't remember their college or high school years, we're basically kind of like visualizing sort of the bell curve of like natural distribution of the sample. So you can see here at the bottom we have like different buckets for cost per lead, like between $0 and $50, $50 to $100, $100 to $150. And then at the top we can see at this time the number of clients that we had data on from a significant period of time that can fall into each one of those buckets. So what you'll notice here is the most common cost per lead. And this is like seeing this, the reason I share this instead of just saying, oh, the average cost per lead is $220. By the way, that's our average cost per lead. That means almost nothing when this is behind that data. And this tells you like, how much is in each.
The range and likelihood.
Yeah. And for people listening through audio, I'll describe it because you can understand it. Basically, we're looking at a bell curve distribution here where the most common cost per lead is somewhere between $250 and $300. But you'll see cost per lead as high as $850 and as low as less than $50 on this graph. So the natural question that everybody asks after they see this is, why is it so different for all these different companies? And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about from a strategy standpoint. And there's a couple things. Like one, the idea is always get the cheapest cost per lead that you can, but you don't want to prioritize cost per lead over other things. Sometimes there's strategies where you want to run with a higher cost per lead and strategies where you want to run with a lower cost per lead. Like we can intentionally shift the quality of the leads towards a higher quality at a higher cost or lower quality at a lower cost. Like that's a decision that you have.
Yeah. We had a Robert Wensley in here, and one of our clips went viral where he just had a breakdown on return on ad spend. Right? It's like, if for example, like the best zip code in your city, it's the best zip code. Like any property shows up there, it's like a grand slam. And you could target, and hoarders have the best margins. For example, if this is your business, right? Wouldn't you be willing to pay, and that you convert 25%, say for example, right? Wouldn't you be willing to spend $2,500 a lead for a hoarder home in your favorite zip code, right? If you know that you close 1 in 4, if you know that, it has to be, you have to know this for a fact, right? That means your cost of contract is $10,000.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to spend that if you know you're going to make 80 or 90K in the back end?
Yeah.
Right? But no one will spend $2,500 on a lead.
100%. And it means that like a common scenario in PPC is that some of the highest value leads are actually undervalued in the marketplace.
Right.
So that happens for sure. And we'll talk about like auction economics. It's a super interesting thing. But yeah, you're 100% right. Like cost per lead is not the end all be all. But that said, would your return on investment improve if you could get that same lead for $1,000 instead of $2,500?
For sure.
Yes. So the goal is always the lowest cost per lead, but we don't want to think that's the only thing that matters. It just, it mixes with the other things. One thing you'll see about this particular graph here is that these basically just to describe like who falls in what segments here.
You got 2 clients that are under $50 a lead.
Is it 2? Yeah. So under $50 a lead happens pretty much only when you're like super national. This is like I'm targeting 48 states with my marketing.
Yeah.
And this is a natural relationship that exists in PPC is the wider you go geographically, the cheaper the cost per lead. That's why you'll see a lot of companies that focus really heavily on PPC. Often they are in multiple markets or even national. So there's and we'll talk about that. That's all part of our location strategy. It's not the only way to do it. We have some clients that are like fully national. Much more common is to be like in this like semi-national range where we're like in, we're in a lot of markets, but we're not just looking for the cheapest possible leads. But some people do well with that strategy. For single markets, anywhere from like $200 to $400 per lead is pretty normal. That's where you'll see like the bulk of our clients being in single markets and then the bulk of the cost per lead being in that range. As we start to get higher, those are usually really small markets. Tiny markets have a higher cost per lead.
Right.
And after we go through the second episode, you'll understand exactly why. Yeah. But as of now, just leave it at that. And then as we get to like these really high cost per leads, that's where we're like really, really small markets. And then sometimes often like the more money you spend, the more of a diminishing return you get. Like I just had a conversation with a client yesterday where they're like, well, my cost per lead's $400 and I'm killing it. Let's push the cost per lead up to $600 and do way more volume. Like that's a real thing that companies do. And some people are looking at that like, $600 per lead? Why would I ever pay that? But it's just like you were saying, Robert Wensley, if you know you convert a certain percentage of those leads at that quality, and you know what those deals are worth, in this case, that client still can hit a 4x return on investment at $600 per lead.
Right.
So we'll do that all day long. We had another conversation with a client, again, yesterday, where their revenue per lead in their business is $3,000 from in their market with PPC leads. So when you're thinking of that, and if our revenue per lead is $3,000 and our minimum return on investment is 3x, we could pay $1,000 per lead. And you could think like, why would you ever do that? You do that because you could push volume really hard if you're going to do that, right? A lot of these companies that dominate a market, they do it at a lower return on investment, but a really high volume. So that's absolutely something to consider. So that's cost per lead. Before we move on, I know it's a deep topic, but any thoughts on cost per lead?
No, I mean, I think that's it. I think the key here that we were saying is like cost per lead is just one thing. It's not it's not the end all be all.
100%. Yep. I'm going to pull up one other really insightful graph here. This is our Google leads per contract percentiles. So, I mean, the two questions that we get asked the most is how much do leads cost and how good are they? Obviously, those are the things that people care about.
Right.
This is my best attempt at using numbers to answer those questions, right? How much do leads cost? And then here we have how many leads per contract by percentile. The reason this is really useful, our average across all our clients is just over 15 leads per contract on Google Ads. It varies though, because you'll hear people talking about how they have 10 leads per contract or something like that. Does that happen? Absolutely. You can see here that would put you somewhere between the 80th and 90th percentile if you were one of our clients. 10th percentile would be like 24 leads per contract. First percentile is probably like 100 leads per contract. Like we'll see that here and there. This largely has to do with the acquisitions team because these numbers are actually normalized based on the types of keywords that leads are coming from and stuff like that, right? So this is like leads that should be the same quality. This is how much it varies still. So it has a ton to do with your acquisitions team. Just to give people a little bit of a picture of like how does this typically go. Normally, if we're going to average 15 leads per contract, what that means is that you'd end up with 13 leads that are like non-spam. Like so two of them, you'd be like 123 Main Street, really, like that kind of stuff.
Right, or some crummy wholesalers that's, hey, I want to be a buyer.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you knock those two out. Now you got 13 leads, which this is, by the way, it's a common misconception for PPC because people are like, well, PPC is supposed to be the highest quality leads. In my cold call, I never get an accidental like buyer lead, but in PPC, I just got this lead that like 123 Main Street. It's not even a real phone number. Like that sucks. I paid a lot of money for that. Like that's the thing is you'll still have less leads per contract. Like it takes that into account, right? So we're taking out 2 leads and we got 13 left. Of those 13, normally we're going to be able to contact about 10 of them. So 3 people we're never going to get in contact with. Of those 10, about 5 are going to get disqualified for various reasons. These are people that we like got on the phone with, and they do have a house to sell. And then they're disqualified because they're retail. They're disqualified because the lead is in a different location than we're located in, which that's actually one of the most common frustrations that we get from clients is like, I'm in Phoenix and you just got me a lead in Florida. What the heck? Are we spending my money in Florida? And what happens is people live in Phoenix, but they're trying to sell a house that's in Florida, or they use VPNs sometimes, or so that kind of stuff happens, and you get leads out of your location. And by the way, there are ways to minimize that.
Right.
So a lot of people, I'm not trying to say like you should have that. There's a lot of stuff that we do to like whittle that down a lot, but you'll still get some. You'll get properties that are already listed on the market.
Get properties from realtors.
Yep, properties from realtors. So that kind of stuff is the reason that you generally, or like wrong property type, like it's a mobile home and you don't like mobile homes or something like that.
Yeah.
So you have 10 people that have a house to sell that you talk to on the phone. Whittle that down to 5 that you consider actual opportunities. From those 5 opportunities, you should get 1 contract.
Gotcha.
So that's like the basics of PPC. So people ask these questions like, I'm getting spam leads from PPC. Is that normal? Yes. But how many? 50% of your leads are spam? Like, no, that's not good.
Right.
Or, I'm getting these out of area leads. Is that normal? Up to about 10%, pretty normal. Beyond that,
how likely is spam coming from PPC?
How likely is it?
Or how does that even happen?
Well, it's one of the greatest mysteries of the universe. I mean, there's a ton. So, I mean, we could do a whole episode just on click fraud.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing that happens in PPC. And there are ways to mess this up where your PPC campaigns will get almost 100% spam leads. It's a real thing. So what I'm sharing here is like numbers from a campaign that's run well.
Mm-hmm.
A not well run campaign could be all over the place. And sometimes even a well run campaign could have like a higher spam rate or something like that. But the reasons for spam are going to be sometimes
Google Partner Network.
Oh, that is a nightmare. Don't even go there. So yeah, that's like when I talk about like how if you run it wrong, you can get like 100% spam leads. Like that's if you're on the Google Search Partner Network, where there's a ton of click fraud. There is some click fraud on Google's actual network, and that you might get a spam lead here and there, but it's hard to say exactly why spam leads exist. Sometimes it could be your competitors messing with you, or it could be bots maybe that get past Google's system. Google's incentive is to get rid of those as much as they can, but it happens still.
One of my favorite stories was Sean Terry, right? He was holding a live event in Phoenix, and he was talking about how pay-per-click was really good, and everyone in the room took out their phones and Googled "sell my house fast," and just drained his PPC account.
Oh, that's hilarious!
Right, and just one day, just drained his PPC budget for the day.
Right, that's so funny because they all click. Yeah, I mean, like weird stuff happens, right? Yeah. That's funny. Although I think he did that to himself.
Oh, he definitely did that to himself, and that's like one of his SOPs. Like when we have events, we turn off our PPC campaigns.
That's so funny. I didn't even think about that because they're all just hunting for the website so they can see it and see the landing page and everything. Yeah, that's a little bit wild, but that is, like there's real like, and there's ways to deal with this. Like we use software to like block IP addresses from people if they click more than like a certain number of times within the same day, or a certain different number of times within the same week, or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, there's ways to like deal with that stuff a little bit, but the thing that nobody tells you about for all that stuff is like you already paid for it by the time you know it's a problem, and then you've got to like you can try to prevent from paying for it more, but you've already paid for it.
Gotcha.
So it's a tricky game.
Perfect. All right. So hopefully you guys got a ton of value here. This is just the intro, right? And then the next episode, we're going to talk about laying the foundation. So tune in for the next episode where we'll be talking about how Google works and bidding effectively.
And before I forget, I want to make sure that we get all the resources out so everybody can get them. The first one is if you're looking to book a call with someone on my team so they can talk with you about strategy specifically for your market, for your business, help answer whatever questions you have, you can go to batemancollective.com/disruptors. We're going to put that in the description as well. And then number 2, if you are looking for more resources, and this is something that we'll continually reference throughout this series, we have something we call a PPC toolkit, and there's a bunch of stuff in there, and we'll kind of reference, like I said, some more of those things as we go along. You can go to batemancollective.com/toolkit-disruptors, and that gets you access to a whole bunch of resources. I honestly saw this for the first time yesterday, and I'm a little bit mind blown at all the value that my team put in this whole toolkit. It gives away a lot of our processes that we use for managing PPC, things like an account maintenance checklist, specific geo-targeting parameters. There's 2 separate other master series in there that go even deeper into PPC, and then one for Facebook ads. So it's a pretty cool resource. And then in there, after you sign up for the toolkit, you'll also see the place where you can sign up for the Q&A that we're going to be doing at the end of the series.
All right, perfect. So guys, hopefully in listening to today's mini or first episode and our mini our first module inside our PPC Masterclass of Bateman Collective, you guys got a ton of value, right? So make sure you guys tune in to our next episode where we're going to be going over how Google actually works and how to bid effectively. We will see you guys on the next one.